Hi there, everyone, and welcome to the Daily Gardener, and thank you for listening. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It's July 8th. Today we celebrate the preeminent botanist of North American deserts, and we'll also learn about a beloved botanist and librarian with the Missouri Botanical Gardens. We'll celebrate the Canadian landscape artist who was a member of Canada's treasured group of 7. We'll also celebrate a genuinely great English Kiwi botanist, and we honor summer gardening and garden life with today's poetry. We grow that garden library with a book about 2 plant geeks, 1/10 of an acre, and the making of an edible garden oasis in the city. This book is loaded with ideas and inspiration for anyone interested in urban agriculture and permaculture. And then we'll wrap things up with a sickness caused by snake root. But first, let's catch up with some greetings from gardeners around the world in today's curated news. Well, I opened my inbox this morning, and the first thing I saw was a picture from Maya B. in Pennsylvania. She sent me a beautiful picture of the sun rising in her garden. Susan McPherson sent a picture of her astilbe along with a message for her parents. Happy anniversary, Mom and Dad. And her dad's been a gardener for over 50 years. And then Jenna Roberts sent a picture of her border of limelight hydrangeas. She's got about 12 of them on the side border of her property, and they're all coming into bloom. And they really make for an attractive border this time of year. Love hydrangea. Then finally, Jane from, I don't know where Jane is from, but she did send in a picture of her Clematis pitcheri, beautiful clematis, also known as the bluebill clematis, or leather flower. Sometimes that's another common name it goes by. Now, what makes this clematis special are the nodding flowers. They're dainty and adorable. They're purple, and the pollinators love this clematis. Anyway, it's one of my favorite plants. I think I have 2 or 3 of them in the garden. I know I for sure have 2. They flank a small path to the woodpile back in Maple Grove. And they're growing up this matching pair of obelisks. They're very pretty. Now, if you have this clematis, later in the year you will see the seed heads form. And I have a number of garden friends who have successfully grown pitcheri from seed. So consider saving the seed this year. And another thing I like about this climber is how robust it is. If you're going to use it in your garden, you don't need to go vertical with it. You can just let it go crazy in your herbaceous border. And I think it looks really pretty when it's just kind of scrambling around uncontrolled. And just a quick reminder that this one likes part shade. Don't stick it out in the blazing sun all day, although it is fairly drought tolerant. And the other thing to keep in mind is that this clematis is going to die back to the ground every fall. So if you're looking for a climber to give you winter interest, this isn't the one, but you do get those beautiful, unique blooms and the fascinating, mesmerizing seed heads. Anyway, check it out. It's a cool native clematis. It grows about 6 to 12 feet tall. Anyway, that's it for today's Gardener Greetings. If you'd like to participate in the Gardener Greetings segment, just go ahead and send me your garden pics or stories, birthday wishes, anniversary wishes, what have you, to my email at jennifer@thedailygardener.org. It's jennifer@thedailygardener.org. And here's just a gentle reminder that if you're listening to the show at home and you have a smart speaker, you can go ahead and ask Alexa or Google to play the Daily Gardener podcast. And then it'll just start playing and you can listen to the most recent episode. Here's today's curated news. First up is a post from Landscape Architecture magazine. This is a post that was written by Zach Mortis, and he featured the new stamps that are available that feature American gardens. My daughter Emma graduated from high school, and we're putting together her graduation announcements. And these are the stamps, of course, that we got to send out her graduation invitations. This is what happens when you have a mom that loves to garden and has a gardening podcast. So there you go. In any case, I love these stamps, and she does too. You know, they're very pretty, and they showcase 10 landmark gardens from around the country. And the 10 gardens featured are Dumbarton Oaks in Washington, D.C., the Biltmore Estate Gardens in North Carolina, the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, the Chicago Botanic Garden, the Coastal Maine Botanical Gardens, the Huntington Botanical Gardens in LA, the Alfred B. McClay Garden State Park in Florida, the Norfolk Botanical Garden in Virginia, the Winterthur Museum, Garden, and Library in Delaware, and finally the Stan Hewitt Hall and Gardens in Ohio. Fabulous picks. In fact, you could put all of these on your bucket list. Now, all of the wonderful stamps for these gardens were designed by Ethel Kessler. She did a wonderful job. And these stamps are very timely. In fact, the USPS's Bill Geiker said that the stamps remind us of the vital role of the outdoors, especially during the COVID-19 quarantine. And he said, time spent in nature, especially a beautifully cared for garden landscape, can be very uplifting and rejuvenating, just what many people can use at this time. I think we can all agree with that. Anyway, if you are a gardener, these are the stamps you're going to want to use. Or you might have actually a hard time using them because they're so pretty. In fact, I think they could use each of these images and put together a beautiful calendar. In any case, this article from Landscape Architecture magazine showcases all of the stamps as a group, which is how they come from the post office, but then highlights the image for each garden individually. And that's how you'll really appreciate how beautiful these stamps are. Now, if you'd like to track down this article and take a look at it for yourself, all you have to do is search for the word stamps in the Facebook group for the show, and this post will pop up and you can read all about it for yourself. Then next up is a post that was featured in The Guardian, and it was called Finding Chaucer's True Love Growing in the Woods is a Buzz. This was an article that was written by Dr. Paul Evans. And it caught my attention because you don't see all that much written about the herb known as true love. This plant also goes by the common name herb Paris or the true love knot, and its botanical name is Paris quadrifolia. Paul writes, the Paris that the herb gets its name from has nothing to do with France or Greek mythology, but it's a translation of the term that the apothecaries used for it, which was the pear herb, and pear meaning two, P-A-I-R. And this plant definitely has a lot of pears going on. You have twice 2 leaves, twice 4 stamens, twice 2 outer and twice 2 inner segments of the perianth, twice 2 styles, and twice 2 cells of the ovary. And this herb is featured in Chaucer's Miller's Tale, where the plant is used as an aphrodisiac. Now, if you Google herb Paris, you'll see that it produces this beautiful blueberry-like berry. It pops up in the center of these 4 leaves. Now, that berry is poisonous, but it sure is beautiful. It's the crowning touch to that beautiful geometric pattern of those four leaves that actually inspired the lover's knot. Now, there's many, many, many wonderful stories, folklore, and such that are associated with herb Paris. But your main takeaway for today is that herb Paris does not have anything to do with the city of Paris. That term Paris is derived from the Latin for par, which again means pear. And you have all this symmetry going on in this plant. And I think it's quite attractive. And I have to say, it reminds me a little bit of Jack in the Pulpit. You know, Jack in the Pulpit has that prominent flower. Herb Paris has that berry. And that berry is actually very vibrant, very shiny, in the same way the red berries that get produced by Jack in the Pulpit are so brilliant, so attractive. In any case, they're both woodland. They both like damp, shady places. And this is why you'll see them by stream banks or in woodlands. So I can believe that when Dr. Paul Evans was going through the woods and he stumbled on herb Paris, that he got so excited, because it's not every day that you run across this plant. Now, if you'd like to read Dr. Paul's article for yourself, just search for the word love in the Facebook group for the show, and this post will pop up and you can read all about it for yourself. All right, that's it for today's gardening news. Now, if you'd like to check out any of my curated articles or original blog posts for yourself, you're in luck, because I share all of it with the listener community in the free Facebook group for the show, the Daily Gardener Community. So there's no need to take notes or track down links. It's all there for you. And the next time you're on Facebook, just search for the Daily Gardener Community and request to join. I'd love to meet you in the group. Here's today's brevities. Today is the birthday of the American botanist Forrest Shreve, who was born on this day in 1878, and we owe such a debt of gratitude to Shreve. Shreve was the preeminent botanist of North American deserts during the first half of the 20th century. He worked out of a laboratory in Tucson, Arizona, and the lab was perfectly situated for his research of the western United States and northern Mexico. And Shreve relished telling the origin story of his lab. He would say, "Of course you're familiar with the story of Andrew Carnegie, the immigrant boy who became one of America's richest steel magnates. Well, before he died, Carnegie had established an institution that divided its scientific investigations into 12 different departments into widely separated parts of the country. And Shreve's Desert Laboratory was one of the outposts of the Division of Plant Biology that was set up thanks to the Carnegie gift, which all in totaled around $25 million. Wow. Now, in July of 1908, Shreve climbed the Santa Catalina Mountains for the very first time. The group he was with rode on horses to climb the 6,000 feet from Mount Lemon's desert base to the summit, which is 9,100 feet above sea level. And during that climb, Shreve noticed what he called, quote, a continually shifting panorama of vegetation. And it was Shreve's astuteness that helped him realize the most fantastic aspect of desert mountains, which is the changes that occur in the vegetation. They're compressed into a few thousand feet of elevation. And you can almost imagine yourself there with Shreve as you realize that as you go up the mountain, you start with the desert scrub. Then it transitions to grassland, then the oak woodland, and then the pine oak woodland and forest, then the pink forest, then the fir forest, and finally the subalpine forest at the very top. And I love how Shreve described that change, a continually shifting panorama of vegetation. Thanks to Shreve's mastery of the North American desert, he was able to precisely describe and define the 4 distinct desert regions in the United States. And every year on this day, in Shreve's honor, the Forrest Shreve Student Research Award is given to support the ongoing research of the hot deserts of North America. And today is the day that the world lost Eva Reed, who was a botanist, author, and librarian with the Missouri Botanical Gardens, and she died on this day in 1901. Sadly, in the years before she died, Eva had become almost entirely deaf as the result of a fever. In a tragic accident, she'd been sketching on the tracks of the Burlington Railway near Louisiana, Missouri, when she was hit and instantly killed by a passenger train. And today is the anniversary of the death of the Canadian artist Thomson, who was a member of Canada's treasured group of artists, and they were known as the Group of Seven. Tom died on this day in 1917. Tom was born to a pioneer family. He grew up in rural Ontario on the shores of Georgian Bay. He had an idyllic childhood. He was the 6th of 9 children, and music filled the home that he grew up in. And his mom actually read Byron to the kids every night before they'd go to bed. Tom loved to fish, and it would be a lifelong passion for him. And although Tom had little formal schooling, the peace of his childhood home is reflected in the tranquility of his paintings. Just Google Tom Thomson landscape, and you'll see what I mean. As a young man, Tom went to a business college where his excellent penmanship surfaced. He had outstanding handwriting, and it led him to jobs as a pen artist. He followed his brother George to Seattle for work, and he stayed there for a few years, but he returned to Toronto after breaking up with his sweetheart. His feelings were hurt when she nervously laughed at his proposal. Back in Canada, Tom met the men who would become his artistic coaches. Together, they were known as the Group of Seven. One of the 7, Jim McDonald, suggested that Tom's subject should be nature. Tom took the advice to heart, and his work is entirely devoted to landscapes, and he prominently featured trees, water, sky, and clouds. Gardeners will especially appreciate Tom's paintings of trees. They're unique, and they convey a feeling of being alive. And you can just imagine yourself standing right there beside Tom in the spot where he painted his trees. In 1912, when Tom first visited the forest at Canada's oldest provincial park, Algonquin Park, his heart was gripped by the beauty. He became obsessed with Algonquin and spent as much time as he could among the jack pines, black spruce, and maple. At Algonquin, Tom painted his landscapes on a birch panel using oil paints. And tragically, in just 5 short years of getting started with his paintings at Algonquin, the park Tom loved would witness his untimely death. Tom was a mostly uneducated and untrained painter, and so each member of the group of 7 played a role in mentoring and teaching him. You can imagine how he surprised and delighted them when his paintings improved so rapidly. Tom soaked up all their advice, and in many instances, his development as a painter was such that he was surpassing his teachers. Just as Tom's work was rocketing toward greatness, his artistic arc was cut short when he disappeared on this day in 1930. He was only 39 years old. 8 days after his empty canoe was found floating in Canoe Lake, his body was found, and the mystery of his death is a cold case that has never been officially solved. In a little spot on Canoe Lake, there's a cairn for Tom with a marker, and his old friend Jim MacDonald wrote the inscription for it, which reads, "He lived humbly but passionately with the wild, and it revealed itself to him. It sent him out from the woods, only to show these revelations through his art, and it took him to itself at last." Today, Tom's work is considered quintessentially Canadian. Remembering his North Country friend, Jim wrote, "Tom was never very proud of his painting, but he was very cocky about his fishing." And today is the anniversary of the death of the great English Kiwi botanist Leonard Cockayne, who died on this day in 1934. Leonard died when he was 79 years old, and today he's regarded as New Zealand's most celebrated botanist. Leonard was born in England, and he was raised to explore and appreciate the natural world. As a child, Leonard loved pressing flowers. In addition to Leonard, both his brother and sister were also great gardeners. In 1879, Leonard left England and he made his way to New Zealand. Dominion became his home for the remainder of his life. Ever modest, Leonard once sent a letter to Kew along with a small parcel of seeds, and he attached a little note which said, "I may say I am not a nursery gardener, but merely a private individual who spends his whole time in the study of botany." In recognition of his 30 years of tireless work in New Zealand, Leonard won the Darwin Medal. Looking back on Leonard's career, there were times when Dr. Richter von Gerbel and John Paulus Lotze, 2 distinguished botanists from the UK, had visited him in New Zealand. Those visits were real highlights for Leonard, and they inspired him to continue his work. When he died, Leonard was buried at an open-air museum that he helped found. From his grave, you can see the native vegetation which had captured his heart, as well as the heights which bear his name. In Unearthed Words, today's poems and prose are all about life in the summer garden. This first one's from Ruth Pitter, from her book The Diehards, which was published in 1941. We go in withering July to ply the hard, incessant hoe. Panting beneath the brazen sky, we sweat and grumble, but we go. And here's a line from Bev Adams from her book Mountain Gardening. Dirty hands, iced tea, garden fragrances thick in the air, and a blanket of color before me. Who could ask for more. And here's some prose from the English gardener and writer Gertrude Jekyll. There is a lovable quality about the actual tools. One feels so kindly to the thing that enables the hand to obey the brain. Moreover, one feels a good deal of respect for it. Without it, the brain and the hand would be helpless. And here's a quote from the American garden writer and columnist Alan Lacey. I suppose that for most people, one of the darker joys of gardening is that once you've got started, it's not at all hard to find someone who knows a little bit less than you. Here's one from Doris Lessing, the British Zimbabwean novelist, from her book, The Habit of Loving. The smell of manure, of the sun on the foliage, of evaporating water rose to my head. 2 steps farther, and I could look down into the vegetable garden, enclosed within its tall pale of reeds. Rich chocolate earth, studded emerald green, frothed with the white of cauliflowers, jeweled with the purple globes of eggplant, and the scarlet wealth of tomatoes. Here's a line from the American essayist and poet Ralph Waldo Emerson. My garden is an honest place. Every tree and every vine are incapable of concealment and tell, after 2 or 3 months, exactly what sort of treatment they have had. And finally, here's a thought from the American chef and author Alice Waters. It's a comfort to always find pasta in the cupboard and garlic and parsley in the garden. Always explore your garden and go to the market before you decide what to cook. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, Paradise Lot by Eric Tonsmeyer. I love that title, Paradise Lot. This book came out in 2013, and the subtitle is 2 Plant Geeks, 1/10 of an Acre, and the Making of an Edible Garden Oasis in the City. Very timely book. Publishers Weekly said, in this charming true life tale of urban regeneration and the birth of a forest garden movement, Tonsmeyer, famous among permaculture enthusiasts for his perennial vegetables and as co-author of Edible Forest Gardens, tells the story behind the Holyoke, Massachusetts garden, and in the course of 8 years, he and Bates transformed it from a bare backyard wasteland into a flourishing, edible Eden. In true permaculture fashion, the book not only follows the progression of the garden, but also its influence on and relations with its creators' lives. Bates runs a nursery business called Food Forest Farm, and he contributes philosophical and personal essays interspersed throughout this book. Fans of their work will be thrilled to read the details of their experiments with polycultures, their problems with and solutions for pests and overly aggressive plants, and their idiosyncratic plant choices. That's something that I personally enjoy. Then it says, adventurous readers with conventional gardens and lawns may be inspired to venture into the more integrated evolutionary approach that this book so vividly and appealingly portrays. And I couldn't agree more. This book is 240 pages of detailed ideas and inspiration for anyone interested in urban agriculture and permaculture. And you can get a copy of Paradise Lot by Eric Tonsmeyer and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $14. Great deal. Finally, here's something sweet to ignite the little botanic spark in your heart. On this day in 1965, the Vincennes, Indiana newspaper reported on a sickness caused by snake root. Here's what it said. It was about 140 years ago that the town of Hinduston, Indiana, was abandoned by its residents because of a plague of milk fever. This disease occurs after milk cows have eaten wild snake root. A few years ago, a botanist shared that the Hinduston neighborhood still is the best place in the Midwest to collect wild snake root for laboratory work. Well, white or wild snake root is a problem for livestock if they consume it. All parts of the plant are toxic, and that toxin gets transferred through the cow's milk, and that's how it becomes a concern for humans. And this sickness is known as milk sickness. In the early 1800s, milk sickness resulted in the death of thousands of people. The most famous person to die from it was Abraham Lincoln's mother in 1818. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener, and remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced in lovely Wyoming, Minnesota with the help of Paige Mance, Brooke Bierbaum, Kiana Rayleigh, Maddie Doyle, Natalie Decker, and Eric Begay. You can find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media. You can follow the show on Instagram, and listeners always have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for the show. Just search for Daily Gardener Community the next time you're on Facebook and request to join. All the stories and books that are featured on the show can be found over at thedailygardener.org, thedailygardener.org. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for my free Friday newsletter. Last but not least, you can share your own gardener greetings on the show by emailing me at jennifer@thedailygardener.org. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and as always, have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.